Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 74th episode of DevKami, and I am Chile.
And I'm Tristan.
Hi,
And
this is
I'm
John.
Suming. And John was over here somehow.
Yeah, we have John over again to talk about. Right now, everybody has to stay at home, so we're gonna have John over to talk about Civic Tech during the COVID-19 outbreak. Yep.
And swimming has is under quarantine.
Yeah.
Like strict quarantine. Nobody can even see him.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's what's
And also
So
internet connection. So I might cut off halfway
Yeah.
or something.
yeah,
is
it's
it
fine.
true that Unify is like throttling connections because everyone is
They-
using?
There are some effort to censor contents as well. I'm not sure if whether with John will cover that, but it's discovered via only probe that some telco in Malaysia are trying to do not just a DNS-based censorship, but more like a SNI or DPI, like more like China-like kind of censorship in Malaysia
Yes.
during this period.
And if they actually do that and actually do cause network to go slow, well, that's going to be interesting to complain because it just makes Malaysia very
Yeah.
ineffective.
Let's go through our regular stuff first.
And that would be nice.
Okay.
So there's no event for the whole week. Yeah, don't go out. Some of the events organizers are trying to come out with virtual meetups. They're still planning it, so let's see how it goes. And the movement control being extended to the 14th until next month. We have another how many weeks? 3 weeks. 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
yeah. And for Bus Corner, not much going on really. There's and a lot of services are being throttled as well. Like even for some of the event, some of the content, what do you call it? Moderations for YouTube. If they flag you, as an incorporate like a false negative, they're gonna have because they need a human verification. So it's gonna take them more time to fix whatever that's being flagged automatically by the bots. Same goes with some of the App Store submission. Google Play Store and App Store, Apple App Store.
There was something in Facebook like a week ago as well. A lot of posts were being auto-reported as
Yeah.
spam or like against rules, and apparently because Facebook moderation team was on a skeletal workforce, like a skeletal
Yeah.
capacity, the AI took over and then just censored almost
Yeah.
a lot of the things, and apparently it didn't go so well.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. In fact, that apparently is one of the arguments in one. I forgot which article it is, that they said if AI and robots are taking over our jobs, where are they now?
Yeah.
Right? So, like, if they should, the things should be still continuing, but apparently, a lot of the work still require human beings to be accomplished. But let's see what happens.
Yeah. Nicholas also say like the Corona Tracker mobile app get thrown out of that because of that as well. So a lot of this happening. Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
Mm.
So it happened to some of the work stuff.
What was the argument to flag that one?
Pardon?
What was the argument to flag that up?
If there's a significant number of people trolling, flagging the apps, or giving it a bad reviews, or it hits certain threshold of a certain keywords frequency, it will be thrown out automatically by the bots. So normally we have human moderators there to stop it before it's do more mistakes.
I'm just wondering if anyone knows what was the notification that was sent to the people who are managing Corona Tracker. I
I have no
understand
idea. Yeah.
that's a project from Dr. Lao Han, right?
Yep. I have no idea about the details for that.
I
It's
actually
not
have
from our authorized agency. Not so sure about that. So
okay. So I actually happen to have him on Telegram right now. He's answering to me, so I'm gonna be asking him the question. I'll get back to you.
yeah.
Um,
And before we start the show today, YouTube also give us a lot of warning, like in case your content get improperly flagged. So I'll give them some time to do it. So there's a lot of these disclaimers. So any more things like for Buzz Corners? Any good news?
I don't know. I don't know if there's any good news.
Let me
It's
look it
like
up.
it, a slow news week. This is like really
Yeah,
slow news week just because nothing
yeah.
much is happening.
Even like Hacker News
Yes,
or
and it will be inappropriate
yeah,
as well.
yeah,
In fact, there is a sale online right now. I think it's really inappropriate. Think about it because uh, I mean it's understandable if you're selling essential, but they try to sell me all the things that I want to buy that is not essential.
But is it an online sale
So
or a
yeah,
physical sale?
so it get a bit
it's
interesting
it's
now.
online sales.
I think if it's an online sale, this is just like them trying to survive, I guess, because less people are actually buying. Not like especially in like because in KL we have easy internet access, right?
Yep.
But in like the far-flung areas, you only have a mobile phone and your 4G, 3G as your internet access. You don't have fast broadband. And I guess they're just trying to recoup the losses because people are not buying as much. So they want to like, okay, come and buy more. So everyone is affected.
Nope, not so much happening. And on Hacker News, the usual site that I visit, and Project, normally every day there's at least 1 or 2 pages of new content, and nowadays it's just less than half a day. So everything's basically uh, slowing down. So, yep, nothing much to talk about Buzz Corner. Do we have anything to add?
No?
no,
Yeah.
every,
Then,
and everything is going to be like this for quite some time. I've been
yeah.
seeing some, PTX sends you recommendations of events for the next weeks, and I see that there's some of them outside of the community that are scheduled for, let's say, the 11th of April or for a little bit later than that. I would recommend everyone that based on the experience that we had in other countries, let's assume and let's come from the assumption that April is going to be a full month of lockdown. It is not an unrealistic approach. We only have to consider the speed at which China was able to contain the situation was essentially because they went all ballistic, literally going door by door and locking people inside, even with iron bars, if you were not complying with the request of self-isolating yourself. That has not been happening in any other country, and you cannot really imagine that it's going to be happening in any other country because of the nature of the political system. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so you can imagine that if they took them. So I get friends in mainland China, and most of us possibly have friends over there. We've been discussing with them, trying to extract what is their own personal experience. I get a friend in Hokot, up north in Inner Mongolia, and there was only one case reported in the city. They locked down the whole city because of it, and they spent a whole 2 months in lockdown, self-isolated, and only now they start getting out. So if you start, you cannot really cheat maths. Um, the situation that happens in the rest of the planet where we've been having this out of control expansion of the virus, it pretty much leads you to understand that this is going to be at least, you know, I don't want to be a doomsayer. It's really not my intention. We should, put ourselves into the mentality that it's likely going to be a couple of months like this, and after that, we need to start thinking. We need to start factoring what's going to be the emotional response of people, feeling about going out or not, whether it's actually safe to go out, how social habits are going to be affected, and you know how soon the world is going to open up again.
It's people are going to be adapting, I guess. Not just so. Let's say all of these things come to pass, like we are like beginning of May. Let's say um, people start going out of their houses because it's safe. Hopefully, by that time, it's already safe. But they will remember that during this time they were locked up indoors, and they've started assuming particular habits that allow them to survive during this time, and hopefully or not hopefully, or fortunately unfortunately, they might bring them forward to when it's not as required, so we'll see. Streamlabs seems to be a bit laggy this time.
Yeah.
Like I am detect like for example when we were talking, it's
Mm-hmm.
usually it's like half a second before you hear what I'm saying, but now I think it's up to 2 seconds from how I count when you actually respond versus when I stop talking. So
Oh, okay.
I'm not sure what's up.
It would be good if there's anyone from the audience or even any of you guys who has been having a look at international bandwidth consumption.
Mm.
I don't know
I never heard of that.
if there's any metrics out there that we can look at. It would be very interesting to know what's the saturation right now, because all of a sudden everyone is at home, everyone is video
Yeah.
conferencing, everyone
Yeah.
is going on platforms to do telework,
Yeah.
everyone is streaming movies, everyone is Netflixing like crazy.
Mm.
I'm not sure the infrastructures were at all sized for this. I'll be very interested on because I myself have been seeing some lagging, and I'm using Time, and I'm using Tune Talk for my phone, and of course you can always get paranoid about just about anything.
Yeah.
So
Mm-hmm.
I cannot say if it's me that is happening. I don't know if it's much more general. I wouldn't be surprised that at least at the backbone level there's a good amount of congestion. It would be nice to know something about that.
Mm-hmm. I have a link from Slashdot. Let me just log in to YouTube. I mean, not log in, but I guess I have to log in if I have to comment. But let me go to YouTube so that I can post it there, and then you can see it's apparently it's 70% up. So actually, Chi Leong, can you post it on general the YouTube link? Then I can post it there. So apparently
Okay.
70%
Oh, I forgot.
internet use up. Streaming is more than 12%. And this is according to a Forbes article. E-commerce will be the other sector that sees a revenue boost. But the movie industry is predicted to have losses because there's a 25% decline in visits. And apparently, well, they predict that recovery only starts happening in 18 to 24 months. So,
I think this whole thing actually shake the foundation of whatever that all these traditional businesses are comfortable with at least.
mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, it's
force
interesting.
them.
So
Yeah.
there's a number of calls, for example. So lots of industries are failing because of the traffic. Like traffic just went down, right? So cruises, for example, and then they're saying don't bail out the cruises because they're not really an essential thing. They don't really pay taxes on the country that they're supposed to be paying taxes at, and they pollute the oceans, etc. So lots of businesses are just failing. Airlines, for example, there's talks of um, bailing out the airlines, just like how the U.S. bailed out the U.S. banks during the I don't know what crisis was that.
The subprime
The
crisis.
Yeah,
The Lehman
subprime.
Brothers one.
Yeah,
Yeah,
subprime.
because
Also,
the government
also,
bailed out
yeah,
the banks.
sorry. In the current situation, the last place I would like to be is in a cruise.
Mm.
The air inside the cruise is for the most part recirculated. So if
Mm.
someone is infected, you have higher chances to get it. As a matter of
Oh,
Yeah.
fact, one of the things that condos should one of the measures condos should be applying as soon as possible, although I doubt they will for many reasons. Also, I haven't been able to figure out if there is a legal restriction for what I'm going to say now. They should actually stop air circulation in the elevators. It
Mm.
essentially is the same situation that you have
yeah.
in the boat. So I don't know if, for instance, there's a regulation that says that for safety reasons the air should always be circulating. Maybe that's the case. If anyone knows from the audience, please let us know.
Yeah.
I'm curious about that. If shouldn't that be the case, it's definitely one of the measures buildings should be taking as soon as possible.
Well, definitely on high-rise buildings, the air needs to be circulated. If you see, for example, rooms that have AHU on in front, means the air holding unit. That's actually like the places where the air becomes recirculated. Because if you don't, then air becomes stale and pressure high above will not be as uh, like it's not going to be oxygenated because everything falls down basically.
That's
So it
interesting.
might be a
Do you know starting which level that starts being an actual
no.
requirement?
So the only reason I know this is because many years ago, one of the social studies of all subjects, social studies subjects that I was studying, uh, was talking about the first times like what kind of technology enabled high-rise buildings to happen. It was the elevator and all of the problems high-rise. So because it's social studies, it's about like how people come together. We started off with villages, well, single floor, and then you have multiple floors, and you have a whole village worth of people in a single building, for example. So
Mhm.
that's the only knowledge I have on this subject. I will have to find out more about the specifics or the regulations about it.
Welcome to Judge Dredd. Just reminded me that movie.
Hmm. Yeah, so swimming just dropped out. Yeah, it's speaking of the internet access, it's really bad, and
Yeah.
if you have a VPN, so what I'm doing to survive right now, because apparently some U.S. sites are being very slow right now, and like downloading repositories from GitHub, for example, is quite a pain.
Yeah.
Uh, Doing a VPN through
Does it
Singapore
help?
is not. Which one? The VPN through Singapore? Yeah, that's the
Yeah.
only
I think it's because
really the
probably
only
the
way.
nodes there is that is holding up. Because
Mm,
I'm on Bitbucket and Bitbucket have been having issues with performance for these few days.
yeah. So the only way I can survive doing actual work is through a VPN through Singapore, and it's my own VPS. I set it up myself. All of these things, so I can control basically I'm the only person who's using the traffic that particular server. So I guess we really have to find ways how to survive.
So
I
uh,
I got confirmation, sorry, from Dr. Lau that essentially they are taking down every single app that doesn't come from a health organization or from
Mm.
the government. So that
I
seems
guess
to be
they're
the main
dealing
thing.
with a lot of fake applications right now, and with the reduced workforce, they can't actually do a proper review of all the. I
Mm.
mean, yeah, sure, we trust the person, but they wouldn't know, and we wouldn't
Mm.
know that maybe how they uploaded it. Like, are their machines, for example, safe? Maybe their machines that they use to upload to the Google Play Store are compromised and actually has a like a malicious payload that hitches a ride, so they wouldn't really know.
Whether the key is secure or everything in this.
Yeah, so I guess they're just doing like as safe as possible, just so that because once people get infected with a malware because of Google's fault, and it's very difficult um, to like fix because of the lessened manpower.
That speaks as well a lot when it comes to the access to information and access to products made
Mm-hmm.
by not official entities. Since we were going to talk about civic tech, um, that particular, I'm not going to call it censorship because it is not. It's probably not an intentional cutoff. It's more because of the resources and the circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
It still speaks about the frictions that you're going to have as an organization that may have a very interesting product out there to help people and may not be able to have necessary exposure because of these restrictions. So imagine if the official stores such as um, the Apple Store and Google Play offer are under that particular circumstance, and you expand that to most social media platforms because they may be exactly under the same shortage of manpower, and they have to do the same filtering as much as possible. Then all of a sudden, you have very limited capacity to get out those solutions, and even less to have an outreach.
Mm-hmm.
So it become like unintentional censorship, or
Yeah, I mean, censorship.
That,
I don't
yeah,
think censorship applies
yeah,
because it's not voluntary. It's
yeah,
not. I don't think they are
yeah.
trying to specifically
It's just
censor.
unintentional. It's one of the side effect that
Yeah.
to rely
I,
on this.
it's more like an effect of slower communications. So if you have slower communications, then transparency suffers because you don't get the truth out as immediately as possible. Because transparency is usually how you like fast communication is usually how you would do transparency. Like if you have like important information, you'd like it to reach the concerned party as fast as possible, but right now uh, the correct information is not even able to reach everyone just because everything is so slow right now. Like it's we're getting disconnected. It's like literally disconnected from each other because information is not getting across.
So let's get like in a bit, like because I'm even though like I have to stay at home, the work schedule is still a bit busy, so I didn't manage to catch up on what's happening in the civic tech world, what is going on right now with all
Mm-hmm.
those civic tech organizations around. So
Are you? Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
I
just
wasn't. I wasn't sure if you wanted to introduce
yeah.
something else before
No, no, no.
I
I'm asking a question because I'm not in the loop.
Yeah. So because of this particular situation and all the crises that has come attached to it, um, and also because a lot of people all of a sudden are having quite substantial amount of time in their hands, um, there's been quite a very intense activity when it comes to civic tech towards solutions, specifically on COVID-19. COVID-19 is basically um, how's the English, taking over almost all conversations and almost all the projects that you can imagine. It's all over the place. There is a number of a quite substantial amount of projects that are out there available for people to participate. I can mention the impact of civic tech in places such as Taiwan, for instance, where people who are involved with the Gulf Zero were able to develop an app to palliate the possible existence of the black market of face masks. They were able to actually tag information around and make sure that the places with resources for face masks were probably mapped out, and that they were actually managed in a way that the most unfavorable segments of society would have access to it, instead of the situation where we had in the US, where people would go to Costco and buy all the soap they can find and all the hand hygienizer they can find, and then resell it on eBay and on Amazon. In quite a number of cases, people have been banned for having
Yep.
this kind of attitude. So this is the sort of outcomes that Civic Tech has had. That's just an example. There are groups out there. I'm not quite sure how familiar the Malaysian scene is with Code for All and the different branches that they have. There's Code for Africa, Code for the Netherlands, Code for Japan, etc., etc. It's essentially a civic tech organization. Everyone over there is a volunteer. I think they recently got some paid staff, at least for the structure of the organization itself. I can give you on the private chat here, so you can post it, a few links. So, for instance, the first one on how Taiwan has been solving some problems through Civic Tech. Got it there. It's a very interesting article.
Where did you share it?
On the private chat here in
Private chat. Okay.
StreamYard,
Yeah.
Okay.
because I'm not logged into YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I'm gonna share it. I also shared the Gap Zero equipment. It's in Chinese. It's a Facebook post about like they have been doing this mass mapping with Taiwan. Gap Zero is in Taiwan, so they've been doing this with the people from over Japan and Korea. So they created a mass map. They call it.
Mm-hmm.
So
So there is also this initiative in Singapore. I don't know if you guys have heard about it. It's called. Sorry, I also lost my.
the tracing.
Trace Together. Yes.
Yeah.
So I'm a
Right.
little bit I'm still trying to figure out exactly how much Civic Tech is behind this one, in the sense that I know people in the My Data space. My Data is an organization quite similar to the IO Foundation, where they're doing things that have to do with data ownership from a technical perspective. And they are trying to discuss with the Japanese government to do a similar application, this time from a full Civic Tech implementation. Now, to get a little bit into this app and the way it works, Trace Together, it essentially allows if you install the app, it allows the app to activate Bluetooth low consumption. I can't remember what's the name of the mode, has a fancy name. And so when you move around, you'll be detecting whoever is also having the app.
Advertising.
Therefore, exactly.
Yeah.
And so basically, you become a beacon,
Mm.
and you can receive who's around. And in the event of any of these people getting a positive case, you'll be able to trace back who they have been in contact
Yep.
with, or in which distance. The issue here is privacy, because there's a moment where that information could be used for other purposes. So it has to be very, very clear on how. I haven't done any research
Yeah.
exactly on how the data is stored and what is the authorization to access to identify those particular individuals. In any case, it's a concern, and in general, it has become a concern. All of the platforms, and the fact that we are getting so much dependent on communications right now, and the number of platforms in order to be able to interact with others, the amount of data that is being collected from users has just gone up the roof. I can give you. There is this article as well from. Let me see. AFF, Electronic Frontier
I also
Foundation.
yeah. I also know that Israel is doing similarly tracking, but based on extrapolation from the GPA, the phone with the phone distance with the GSM towers.
Right.
So unlike the trace together, the lesser evil is that at least trace together is an opt-in, but the concern is how do they manage or how are they being responsible to the data that are collected.
Correct.
I
Because
and fun fact, I cannot post the link from EFF because according to YouTube rejected the comment.
What?
what?
Yeah, rejected the EFF link.
What?
Yep.
For those who
Where's
may
the
not know,
EFF link?
it's in
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
private chat as well.
Oh,
Yeah.
I shared it again, and it's past this time, so it's probably some sort of heuristic algorithm at work.
So anyway, I would say that um, there's a silver lining. I believe that's the expression in English, like an upside to the fact that we are here all confined, and despite the fact that all the information that I'm getting is developers not only working as much as before, they're even actually working more. That's what I'm getting
Yeah.
from everybody. Those who may have some time in their hand, it could actually be a very good opportunity to start getting involved into civil society by way of these projects. These projects are requiring not only developers, they're also looking into project managers, they're also looking into UI UX graphic designers, documenters, etc., etc. It's not only uh, developers themselves. So I'm going to share with you more links. The first one is a document that is put together by Code for All organizations, and it has um, a huge number of projects that you can look into um, and try to get involved, whichever you think is going to be interesting for you. And there is So, for instance, in Malaysia, the Ayo Foundation is actually doing a project we are doing a project on mapping lockdowns worldwide to try to have a general understanding of what the situation in terms of mobility. So typically, people are very much concentrated in their own countries for very obvious reasons. And we get a lot of information in terms of how many active cases are in different countries and how many people are recovering, how many people are dying, and we are sort of seeing the amount of population who's getting affected by the pathogen. Um, we are not necessarily having a general picture on how the world is closing down, how the borders are being restricted as much as possible, and how people cannot move anymore. How is that affecting? And even more so, how it's going to look like in the next months. Because we don't necessarily, can picture in our heads how the map of those lockdowns are going to look like. Again, because we don't necessarily have access to all of that information firsthand. So our project basically allows you to see how that projection is going to be, and we hope that it's going to give a better understanding um, of how things are moving in the future. But there's other interesting projects on as well, trying to map information from a local perspective. Um, just go through the document, and you're going to be able to find some very very interesting initiatives. There is also this amazing page that I'm also going to give you, helpwithcovid.com/projects. And seriously, when you start scrolling down and you see what all the people are involved with, and you see that there's 5 pages of projects, it really feels good. There's a lot of people who are very motivated to get out there. For our project, for instance, we've been sending out requests for support at many levels, from, like I said before, from developers all the way to documenters. And we had a very, very good response. There's a lot of people. I'm spending a lot of time onboarding people and explaining things, and then letting them get into the team and get to participate. And I don't know. you will be surprised by the amount who are out there. So it's a very good opportunity for all of you to look into what's out there and to get changing a little bit the perception that we have of civil society and civic tech in Malaysia. Um, when you were also mentioning before on the organizations that now need to move into working remotely in big groups. Um, there is this chapter of Code for All called Code for Africa. I was just talking with the executive director the other day, and interesting other stuff. Very interesting guy.
Mm-hmm.
And he basically told me that they were not affected at all. That they have been working with a remote structure for the past 2 years. That the whole team, that they only had a very small office for paperwork and whatnot when they were aware, and they shut that down 2 weeks before the thing went on the roof, and essentially it's not affecting the operations at all. So what I mean to say by that is that it may be right now a lack of experience from the part of companies and organizations. It is, however, absolutely possible to implement those two strategies.
Yeah.
So we're gonna get there
It's
one way or another.
yeah, force them to try it out and evaluate it at least
Hmm.
for those that are more traditional.
Yeah. So with the link that I shared about the EFF, there's a number of tools that are reviewed. It's very interesting to see how they have been evaluating them in terms of privacy.
Mm-hmm.
One of the platforms that I would definitely run away from as much as possible is Zoom at this very moment. They are massively collecting information from users.
Oh, Zoom is collecting a lot of information.
Yeah,
Wow.
it is.
Apparently, a lot of people are now going for Zoom just because
Yes.
it's quite full featured. But I don't know how many people actually know that they're collecting a lot of information.
Yeah, they
So
even have. Oh, oh.
Oh,
no,
okay.
so for these privacy things, I'm not sure how many of you have read the novel called Scarlet Letter.
Nope.
It's like a classic novel from. So it's about this person who was branded with an A for adulteress, and it's about social stigmatizing.
Mm,
And what happened is like
Well,
she's a good person, but because everyone branded her like she has the A, she's forced to wear an A on her clothes for the rest of her life. Everyone just shuns her, even though she's like good, hardworking. She does quality needlework and all of these things. And I guess what's the danger with all of these contact tracing apps is that if you brand someone with like, oh, you're a virus infector or something, then the social stigma is quite difficult to handle, not just during the actual um, the actual infection, but also even afterwards.
um,
Like, oh, you were the person who caused like my grandfather to die because you shook his hand or something, or you attended a party or some, or you visited my home. And so this kind of like these kinds of identification of like kinds of information are quite dangerous.
mm. There is a trade-off to be had, and that's always the very difficult decision to be made um, between personal privacy and public healthcare,
Mm-hmm.
public interest. As in, for instance, whether you use this the Singaporean app or the Israeli approach of using the GSM antennas. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
there has to be a point where you need to reveal the identity of the person who's infected so that that person can get treatment. Because that person may not even know that they
Yeah.
are infected or that may have been exposed. So it's difficult in the sense that yes, you might be revealing information, and in the end, it's essentially it's not the revealing itself; it's who has access to that information in the process of revealing it, and what are the checks and
Mm-hmm.
balances that you are applying to make sure that that doesn't go beyond the actual scope of the revealing intention.
Um,
Uh,
did we lose him? I think
Lose whom?
I think we lost him.
Yep,
Yeah. So
I got.
YouTube,
I'm still here.
you. Oh, okay, there you go.
So you have a delay.
Yeah, most likely. Because right now,
Some.
I can send you a screenshot. Well, I'll take a screenshot. Because actually, I don't see your face right now. It's just like something, um,
Like the
it looks
loading,
like
the
the
spinner.
loading. Yeah, yeah, spinner. But on YouTube, it's all good. So I can only like I can o- I, and but YouTube is delayed for like a number of seconds. So I don't know if people disconnected or I got disconnected. It's a bit difficult
You've been on
to find
for
out.
me ever since the beginning.
Mm,
I haven't seen any difference.
yeah. Well, so you mentioned about China handling the the crisis like
Mm-hmm.
with a very heavy hand, and is that something that might be used by um, people who would prefer a more like governments, for example, as a push for more information from their citizens, because China has all of these like facial recognition, all of this database from of their citizens, and they know exactly where people are. They know exactly
Mm-hmm.
where you've been, and in these kinds of crisis, that's actually exactly what you want. And now Singapore, Israel, they're basically trying to do what China had been collecting for the past number of years, trying to
Mm-hmm.
find out the movement of people and where they are. So is that a danger in the future?
So as I was mentioning before, it's always going to be a trade-off between um,
Mm-hmm.
individual rights and society rights, public interest. We do have legal instruments to make sure that the excuse of public interest is not misused all the time. To try to abuse of citizens at large at just any given time. For instance, I can tell you the case of Spain. Constitution in Spain allows the government to issue what's called a state of alert for the first 15 days. Any extension beyond that needs to go to the Dawal the equivalent. Okay, so there are just checks and
Mm-hmm.
balances depending on the country, and when you do that, you have specific provisions and specific powers, whereby certain rights may be lifted temporarily, and I want to make the stress on the temporarily part,
Mm-hmm.
because of the exceptional situation that the government assumes is happening, and in order to tackle and to save lives, you just resort to those exceptional measures. Once the situation is over, there's no justification anymore, and return into um, making individual rights the primary focus and the primary element of defense. When it comes to China, I wouldn't be very much acquainted with that. It's just that I can imagine that any of these circumstances are perfect arguments to trigger fear among population and to start requesting broadening the understanding of what's an emergency or what are the
Mm-hmm.
exceptional cases. And so people start seeing you as a savior, as the person or the government or the institution who's going to be taking care of you. And therefore, it's a very simple argument to peddle around, and a very dangerous one because you need to understand exactly what are the consequences, and people are not necessarily uh, aware of the full
Mm-hmm.
gamut of consequences that can have.
So, would you rather have like a government be responsible for that kind of um, like the capture and storage of personal information for emergencies, or would you rather have like a private industry like doing this type of
I think
collection?
I think it all goes to check and balances
Yeah.
and
Well,
transparency and how it
Yeah.
works.
well, the thing is, because it's if it's a government, then you know exactly what, like you can easily, at least the citizenry, if it's a democratic country, you can change the government, and if
Yep.
it's not a democratic uh, country, then well, basically you're stuck with that. But the problem with private is that they have their own interests in mind, and
Mm.
I think
Yeah.
what's happening right now is like a lot of these small entrepreneurial people try, well, not really to make profit, but more to like lend their technology. But there is that danger of going over to collecting too much more information than they actually require. And maybe some people are just malicious and they just want to collect the information now and then maybe sell them later.
I think there's also part of the guilt relies on programmers because I've been guilty of that. Of
Mm-hmm.
I'm not quite sure I'm going to need this data point in the future. I'm going to capture it just in case.
Yeah.
We'll see. You'll see. My next iteration is going to make use of this, or I can figure out
Yeah.
something, etc., etc. So sometimes it's the hoarding mentality goes way beyond just programming. As in, how many times you go around the house and you keep looking at a box that you should throw in any case, and you just keep it because you know it's a good box,
Just in case.
and you just never know.
I think a
Um,
lot of the Zeus leakages is caused by recklessness and this kind of habitual hoarding than
mm,
maliciously trying to do harm. It's just reckless. So somebody got hold of it, or you're stashing this and any place you want, and people got hold of it, and it got it got to the hands of people that can make use of it to do harm. Thank you.
mm. And answering what you were saying, Tristan, um, it's very interesting to observe how the evolution of perception of governments, even in democratic societies, has been by civil society and I mean by whoever doesn't belong to the government. Okay, so right now you got these three antagonized sectors between the corporate, the government, and civil society. And what
Mm-hmm.
we seem to forget is actually government is an extension of us. At least in democratic countries, we
Yeah.
do have elements that where we can actually elect the people who are going to be representing us and making decisions for us. Um, it's interesting to understand that governments, or at least structures of management, are required whenever there is a task that goes beyond the capacities of an individual or a whole family. For instance, I cannot myself build a road,
Mm-hmm.
and I cannot get together a bunch of people and start building a road just because. We do require a number of knowledge, a number of resources, etc., etc. Or for the case, for instance, of this pandemic, the amount of information and the amount of resources and the amount of logistics you need to put in place to be able to manage it, to be able to even do forecasting of what's going to be the next pandemic, etc., etc. That goes beyond the capacity of any single individual that you can imagine of. I mean, I would never imagine who can actually handle this by him or herself. So those structures are required. As Chibian was mentioning before, it's a matter of checks and balances. So when you are collecting data through, for instance, the Singaporean app, um, where is the data stored?
Yeah.
Who actually has the control of the data? And where do the requirements for the data to be disclosed have to come from? For instance, does it come from a judiciary system? Is it a judge that actually gets consulted so that you can actually get a judge order, a court order, and then you can apply the disclosing of the data? That kind of things is the ones that we need to look into. Um, when it comes to private companies, as you said, they have their own interests. They have the bottom line of any company is always going to be make money. That's by definition. So any single activity that they're going to have is always going to be related to that, no matter what. They can spend some money, because it looks good for the self-assessment. It reduces taxes every now and then when you have a CSR program, etc., etc., etc. By the end of the year, you need to report your balance to the shareholders, and the shareholders are not hoping that you come to the meeting saying, "Hey, we just made people happier, 10% happier this year." They will basically want to know, I made 10% more money for you, and that's the root of the whole problem. That's the root of why corporates are always going to be a troublesome element in the equation. I would even go beyond when it comes to who has to hold the data. Well, the IO Foundation has a very strong argument in terms of that you are your data, and therefore you should be holding your own data. Whatever is stored, you should keep control of that data, agency over the data at any given time. Whatever is providing you should be under your control, and how you share it should actually be always under your consent prior. Um, there's actually technologies out there that can be used to verify, and I believe you mentioned this before, to verify requirements on, for instance, Tristan, I want to make sure that you can vote. I actually do not require to know your age. The only thing I need to make sure is that the data point of your age is beyond a certain amount. In this
Mhm.
particular case, in Malaysia, is 18. Okay, so there's ways
So
to
it's
actually. Sorry.
so it's almost like a lossy compression of your data. Like you only require particular points. It's like your DVD. It's not very high fidelity, but it's enough to make out a picture, but you don't
Not
have the
really.
exact things.
No, well, yes and no in the sense that you don't have the exact picture because you will not know the value. So essentially, the technology I'm talking about is zero knowledge proof, which I can I want to probe a certain requirement on you that is defined by a number of data points. And what I will do is I will craft very succinctly speaking. I will be crafting a challenge, which is basically
Mm-hmm.
a mathematical equation, out of which the results only me knows. I know exactly
Mm-hmm.
what are the results that I'm expecting if you comply with the value of the data points. I will send you that equation. You will solve it on the side. You got no idea about what am I expecting in return. You send me the response, and that will verify whether you actually comply with the requirement or not. So you protect
Mm-hmm.
the value of the origin data. The only thing that gets revealed partially, as you were mentioning before, is the fact that now I know that you comply with the requirement. So I may not know your age, however, I know that you can vote.
Mm-hmm.
And that information, you're not going to be able to stop it from me learning it because you have complied with the requirement that I just, the challenge that I sent to you. And that can be
Mm-hmm.
used for a lot of applications, including all of these tracings that we are discussing before without having to use Bluetooth, etc., etc.
Got it.
You just need a trustable source, just like a certificate authority to verify that. It's just, I mean, instead of that, it's just most of the time in our development. I can hear myself. It's very obvious. Uh,
So let me ask you a question. What is it for you, a reliable authority?
I think Chilong, that's for you, because
That's for you, yeah.
I was also going to say that the Bitcoin people will say otherwise as well with
yeah,
what you said.
It's a matter of habit, okay? We are just used to governments, and I got nothing against governments, as I was saying before, in terms of the structure that they represent and the help that they can provide. Whether they do it well or bad, that's another story, and we leave that for elections. That's when you have the chance to actually elect people who might be doing a better job or not. The intention of having a government is to be able to have that, and we have just grown to the idea and to the views that they become the reference in terms of identity.
Mm-hmm.
Um, if you think about it, and I don't remember, did I give this example on the past episode
Oh,
about the Apache's story?
I think it's all
I
good
don't.
if we repeat them.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean,
So
we always have
the
a
Apache
few people watching.
the Apaches and the Comanches, I can't remember exactly which tribe, used to have this saying that everyone has three names. The first one is one that is given by your parents. The second one is the one that is given by your friends, and the third one only you and Usen knows. Usen being their major deity, and essentially it represents a very interesting depiction of reality. So the parents represent government. You are born and you are given a certain identity. You are given a name. As you grow up and you interact with your environment, with the society, people will start considering you in a certain way based on your actions, and that's an identity you also create. That people give you a nickname, etc., etc. But most importantly, if I go to a neighborhood and I want to find someone, I don't call the government and ask, "Hey, where is this person?" I actually go around and ask the neighbors. Your identity gets defined by a number of people accepting that you are that person. That's a very interesting shift of mentality. I mean, I am Jean because my family recognizes me as Jean. My family, my friends do because you two know me from before, and therefore you can verify my identity, and that actually piles up into the verification of who I am. And of course, the third one is essentially about how much you know yourself. That's much more philosophical. So when it comes to authorities, like you were mentioning, Tristan, the blockchain community and specifically the SSI community have very, very strong conversations on where lies authorities when it comes to deciding your identity and who will have access to your data and why. Is a whole premise of the self-sovereign identity system.
Mm-hmm.
It's very reminiscent of Web of Trust we used to do for signing party, because I know you. I know that this key belongs to you. So
Exactly.
hence I can trust your
Mm-hmm.
keys whatever it is.
Speaking of word of trust, they are trying to, they were about to have an event in Singapore. I know the person who was trying to bootstrap that. Because of the COVID crisis, they had to move it away. In case the community is interested on following up on this, let me give you yet another link. Give me a second. I'm gonna go to my calendar. And I hope it's gonna load enough, fast enough. We just had a call today. It happens once every month, and it's a pretty good and long community. Here is the link for the registration. Oh, come on. Forget about that one, Shiliang, please. That's just Google playing nasty with redirects. Disgusting. There you go.
Right.
Yeah, anyone who might be interested on the SSI scene and what's being done on Work of Trust that's run in APAC, Asia Pacific, have a look. Might be very interesting for anyone.
A question: how do you get hold of this? Besides, like having a network of people that is in the loop, like for people who want to get hold of this information, is there a place to look for? Like,
It's
how
very
do you
scattered.
discover? It's
It's
just
very
network.
scattered. Yeah, it's networking. It's very scattered, unfortunately. And there's several reasons why it's scattered. So different groups want to preserve their own relevance in the space, and so there's no such thing as a huge repository of all of these things. Also, sometimes it happens that someone has an idea or starts a group or starts a movement and also doesn't know exactly where others could be or what would be the standard way of doing outreach. So they start with whatever they can, and then they get into the habit itself. It's a number of circumstances. I'm always available. So you guys know I'm on Slack more now these days because of the situation and the project that I'm managing over there. Otherwise, Telegram, I'm always available. So if anyone, you can actually give people I'm okay with that. I give consent. You can give my Telegram handle. If anyone wants to look some more into some other topics that we may not have covered here, I'm always happy to try to connect people.
Does your what so the iofoundation.org, does it
Mm.
have like these links or some kind of newsletter or like an RSS feed of things that we need to watch out for?
Not yet.
Or mm-hmm.
Since you are on it, if anyone wants to give us a hand with that, please contact us as well. Because we do have a
Okay.
lot of information. It is essentially a lack of manpower. So it's a lack of resources. We got a lot of stuff that we could share out there, a lot of projects that we could give exposure to. And it's, yeah, whoever can give a hand with that, by all means.
I see.
Now, I'm going to go a little bit off topic since I guess we are about to finish.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm going to be pasting a link on there. It would be cool if you could actually share it around as well.
Yeah.
We've been talking about COVID-19, and most of the time we are just concentrating on how it's affecting us when it comes to, being self-isolated, our work. We can't go to Tesco to shop, etc., etc. The reality is, and let me tell you that Malaysia, interestingly enough, is handling pretty well the situation, in the sense that despite the amount of cases that we have, the saturation in the hospital is still low. As in, I believe the other day I was told that we are only at 30% capacity, so we still have plenty of margin for people to be treated. Let's remind people that a lot of patients infected die because they don't have beds, they don't have respirators, they don't have basic infrastructure to actually attend them. Otherwise, they could actually go through it. It would not be the best 3 weeks of their lives, because they're going to suffer during that time. They could still go through it. And in Italy, for instance, and in Spain, they've been taking the decision of, between three, four, and five patients, they just go and have the one that they think has the biggest survival chance, and they will let die the other five. And it's a difficult situation. So the people who are there, the medical frontliners, a lot of them as well are getting infected. It's the people who are basically fighting for us. I would ask people to go and sign a petition for to actually proclaim at some point International Day for Medical Frontliners for after the crisis. They really really deserve our recognition in the way they've been doing.
Let me see if yeah, so Chiliong already posted it on as a comment on YouTube.
Hmm. Thank you for that, guys.
So, but you're, well, I guess again, an off topic to your off topic, you're not using change.org for the petition. Is there any reason why?
Essentially because Avaz has a much more organic system of
Mm,
working. Also because I'm in touch with them,
I see.
and I've been able to see exactly the way they work. So they work
Mm-hmm.
very much community based. They will look at petitions that are getting traction, and then they actually analyze what are the campaigns that they can initiate to support the petition to actually have an impact.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a very very different approach than change.org, for instance, where would have, which is much more, once the things are there, how does it go, how is going to have an output, how does it have an impact. Abbas do take care of that, and they also have been doing some very interesting research in terms such as privacy, algorithm biases, etc., etc. And they've been issuing some very interesting reports. I don't know if I'm going to be able to find quickly, so I can also share that. As reports, for instance, in this information, they did very, very interesting stuff. Maybe do this later as well. Sorry for floating everybody on links today.
No, it's I think with the quarantine, people are just looking for things to consume because they
Mm-hmm.
can't like experience the world as before, so they look for a different way of experiencing the world, which is like
Mm.
through other people's stories.
Yeah, fair enough.
So yeah, so unfortunately, Chiliong has the thing. I will copy it and I'll post it on YouTube anyway. So I
Mm-hmm.
can't put it on the screen, for example. How about IO Foundation? Do you
Mm-hmm.
have like will you, so you mentioned that you need help with the links, like the collection of links and or for newsletters or those things, but will you also be putting in more information on the website regarding uh, privacy, where like how like, meetups, for example, future meetups, maybe online or maybe in the future when the lockdown is gone, like offline, like a
Yeah.
calendar of sorts.
Yes, that it's absolutely in the pipeline. And again, it hasn't been
Mm-hmm.
implemented because we need to concentrate on other things right now. We've been using other platforms like Meetup in order to get
Mm-hmm.
out the word, and we stopped. So you guys know that we run the Tech Up
Mm-hmm.
events, and
Mm-hmm.
once we observed the situation was escalating, we preemptively stopped doing anything. We didn't publicize it. Like, we are stopping in because of COVID-19, whatever. Because
Mm-hmm.
again, back in the days, it could have been backfiring in terms of for how to commence, but we were very much expecting, because you cannot cheat maths. Okay,
Yeah.
exponential growth is going to happen no matter what.
Mhm.
And so we really stopped having any in-person activities quite some time ago on purpose. And we've been thinking how we're going to be doing the next ones, pretty much like a webinar or a seminar. We are
Mhm.
going to have a number of conversations with women who code and with other local groups, see if we can organize something, and definitely keep going, because it's not because of COVID that we need to stop
Yeah.
the advocacy itself.
Because I would really be interested in some sort of retrospective with how people manage their own privacy. Like, yeah, I was surprised, like, for example, like that Zoom collects so much information
Yeah.
because they have a guest login. I would I wouldn't like I would usually look for services that has a guest login. Like, for example, Streamlabs has that. You don't have to sign up. You can just use it. Of course, the person
Mhm.
who's initiating it will need to eventually give up some of the information so that they can manage the whole thing. But I didn't expect that Zoom has something like that. So now I'm more aware, like, and also more curious as to how other online services that promote all of these communications through the lockdown quarantine, how are
Yeah.
they handling these things?
And specifically, I would say that one rule of thumb is, considering the power that we have nowadays in browsers,
Mm-hmm.
there is no much of a reason why any platform would require you to install anything. So if you go to any video call platform and they require you to install something, I would definitely step away from it. If they provide a native web browser interface, better. And then of course you have to look into what they are trying to acquire, what, for instance, are the cookies that they are looking into, etc., etc., etc. Which, by the way, I
I see.
just I dream for the day where cookies do not exist anymore.
Well, you might. I one of the links I posted, Safari already blocks almost all third-party cookies. So if you're using Safari, it's almost like it's very very difficult to track you across websites because the cookies don't get
Hmm.
shared across websites anymore. So
Yeah.
that's a step, I guess, in the right direction. Yep,
Should we wrap this up?
I think so.
Yep.
It's less of the doom and gloom for now, I guess.
I
Hopefully.
try not to say anything that is doom and gloom.
No, I mean we're gonna be fine. It's just it's gonna
Yeah.
be
Together,
there's
yeah.
always there are always changes in daily life. Just typically they are incremental, and that's why we don't really feel them. And this one is just gonna be much more noticeable, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
And the interesting part is going to be 1 year after these events. Um, what are we going to be remembering about it, and how we're going to be feeling about it? Because I pretty much think that people will keep going to Mama indiscriminately, uh, as if nothing happened 1 year before.
Mm-hmm.
We'll get there.
Okay. It's
All
a
right.
uplifting note. 1 year from now, it's like a story to tell your mamak friends in
Oh,
I
and
the.
can't
I
wait
just,
for I can't wait for Matteo Lima again.
Mhm.
you can always make your own. All right, I guess that's about it. And thanks for being over, John. And goodbye,
Thanks
folks.
for having me.
Yeah,
Bye. See you
I'll see
next
you
yeah,
week.
guys.
yeah, yeah.
Cheers, and get into Civic Tech.